Welcome to Santa Clarita Weekly, where we cover all things local in Santa Clarita Valley every Saturday morning at 9 on KQRU 107.9. Join hosts Tim Haddock and Sage Rafferty as they uncover the latest news, events, sports highlights, and more, keeping you connected and engaged with what matters most in our hometown.
Welcome back for another edition of Santa Clarita Weekly with Tim Haddock and Sage Rafferty. I'm Sage, he's Tim. You can listen to us on the radio at KQRU 107.9 FM on Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock. We are also on YouTube and Instagram, and you can find us online at SantaClaritaStar.com. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez held a massive rally in Los Angeles on April 16th. April 22nd was Earth Day, and we'll look at the history of the holiday and hear comments by Governor Gavin Newsom. And in sports, the West Ranch baseball team is in first place in the Foothill League, but Hart is keeping pace as the regular season comes to a close. The Saugus softball team is undefeated in the Foothill League and has won 10 games in a row. The Kings blew a 4-0 lead in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs against the Edmonton Oilers, but escaped with a 6-5 win. And finally, the Dodgers swept the Rockies and won a couple of nail-biters against the Rangers in Texas. So let's start out and talk about Earth Day. So today we're exploring Earth Day, which was on April 22nd. You might know it, but you might not know its origins. So it began in the 1960s as environmental awareness grew. Rachel Carson's Silent Spring in 1962 highlighted pesticide dangers, but a major turning point was in 1969 with the Santa Barbara oil spill. Inspired by anti-war teach-ins, Senator Gaylord Nelson envisioned a nationwide environmental event. So the first Earth Day was held on April 22nd, 1970. The date aimed for maximum student participation, and it worked. 20 million Americans rallied, sending a clear message that led to the EPA's creation in key environmental laws like the Clean Air and Water Acts. Earth Day didn't stop there, and in 1990 it went global, becoming the worldwide movement we know now. So let's hear from Senator Nelson himself in a speech he gave in Milwaukee just before the first Earth Day in April 1970, courtesy of the Nelson Institute of Environmental Studies.
Tremendously encouraging to see all across this country the remarkable interest on the campuses and off the campuses on an issue which is not only just an issue of survival, but an issue of how we survive. I don't think there's any other issue viewed in its broadest sense which is as critical to mankind as the issue of the quality of the environment in which we live. You hear the word ecology. That's a big science, not a narrow one. It's a big concept, and it is concerned with all the ramifications of all the relationships of all living creatures to each other and their environment. It is concerned with the total ecosystem, not just how we dispose of tin cans, bottles, and our garbage. It is concerned with the habitat of marine creatures, animals, birds, and man. And our goal is not just an environment of clean air and water and scenic beauty, while forgetting about the worst environments in America, in the ghettos, in the Appalachians, and elsewhere. Our goal is an environment of decency, quality, and mutual respect for all human beings and all other living creatures. An environment without ugliness, without ghettos, without poverty, without discrimination, without hunger, and without war. Our goal is a decent environment in its broadest and deepest sense. And winning the environmental war is a whole lot tougher challenge by far than any other challenge ever to confront mankind. We could terminate our involvement in Laos in 30 days, and it's my belief we should, and we could terminate our involvement And we could terminate our involvement in the killings in Vietnam in 120 days, and I think we should. But wish for it, work for it, fight for it, commit unlimited resources to it nevertheless. The battle to restore a proper relationship between man and his environment, between man and other living creatures, will require a long, sustained political, moral, ethical, and financial commitment far beyond any commitment ever made by any society in the history of man. Are we able? Yes. Are we willing? That's the unanswered question.
So Earth Day serves as an annual reminder of the environmental challenges we face and, more importantly, inspires action toward building a more sustainable and healthy planet for all. It's a day for education, for advocacy, and for coming together as a global community to protect the incredible Earth we all call home. On April 22nd of this year, Governor Gavin Newsom gave a speech about Earth Day, and let's listen to his comments.
California's been a leader, and so have you, Chico State. We're here at an institute, it's first in the nation, regenerative ag, a focus on sustainability, low carbon, green growth, to preserve for generations, to pass the proverbial baton. And it doesn't surprise me it happened here first, because that's what California is. Future happens here first. We are America's coming attraction. So we have a responsibility in the spirit of renewal and rebirth to continue to lead. And I'll remind you, Earth Day itself, modern Earth Day movement started in California. It was because of the tragedy of those oil spills in Southern California, in Santa Barbara in 1969, that the next year the world came together, demanded, people came together. People with moral authority, real leaders, not people in positions of power and position and title, but community leaders came together and demanded more from elected officials of all stripes. And the first modern Earth Day was 1970. In 1970, you talk about a movement afoot. Not only was the first Earth Day formally established, but so was the EPA, a Republican president, Richard Nixon, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, all advanced in 1970, a bipartisan endeavor. There's no politics. People cared about clean air, they cared about clean water, they cared about their kids and grandkids, and Mr. Chairman, they cared about Mother Nature, because she bats last and she bats 1,000. She's nothing more than chemistry, biology, and physics. They don't care about politics.
So on April 14th, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez held a rally in Los Angeles as a part of their Fighting Oligarchy tour. Around 36,000 people attended the rally, the largest rally that Bernie Sanders has ever had. Many people were excited to hear from AOC, and let's listen to an excerpt of AOC's speech.
Andrea, and some of you may know me as AOC. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for welcoming me to Los Angeles. And also, happy Passover to all of our friends celebrating this weekend. Thank you. You know, we're all here together because we share in the frustration and heartache that comes from watching those in power actively tear down or refuse to fight for everyday working Americans like us. And we are here together because an extreme concentration of power, greed, and corruption is taking over this country like never before. Oligarchy in America. And we must acknowledge the terrifying moment that we are in right now. And that what we are hearing and seeing with our own eyes is, in fact, happening. We are watching our neighbors, students, and friends being fired, targeted, and disappeared. It is real. People we love are being targeted and harassed, for being trans or queer. Our coworkers, U.S. citizens and immigrants alike, are being disappeared off the street by men in vans with no uniform. Educators are being fired for teaching American history accurately, and activists are being detained with no charge or evidence for using their First Amendment rights, especially when they use them for Palestinians. In fact, the Trump administration admits that it has jailed Mahmoud Khalil, a young husband and father from New York, without any evidence or charge of a crime. The Trump administration admits that they have thrown Mahmoud in a cell thousands of miles away because he attended a protest, and are detaining him for the content of his speech and nothing more. In fact, Donald Trump's detention of someone like Mahmoud Khalil for his speech is anti-American. And we demand his release, along with the release of Rumeisa Ozturk, who he is also jailing for writing an op-ed in her school paper. And we demand their release because we, Los Angeles, we do have power in this moment. All of us do, and everyday people do. In fact, you all showed that this week, LA. A few days ago, ICE officials attempted to enter 2 LAUSD schools to target kids. They lied to school officials and claimed that they had parents' permission to get to these children when they didn't. But it wasn't just a lawyer or a judge that said no. It started with everyday people, school staff and employees who spoke up when they felt something was off. And it was the teachers and principals that stood strong and said no to protect their kids when it could have been easier to say yes out of fear. You defended them, LA, because it will never be just institutions and officials alone that uphold our democracy. It will always be the people, the masses, who refuse to comply with authoritarian regimes, who are the last and strongest defense of our country and our freedoms. Because we know, Los Angeles, that a better world is possible, and we are willing to do something about it. But to get there, we need to be honest about how we got to this place. Because this moment did not come out of nowhere. It has been a long time coming. The destruction of our rights and democracy is directly tied to the growing and extreme wealth inequality that has been building for years in America. It is not a coincidence that billionaires like Elon Musk dumped billions of dollars in this election to elect Trump. And I'll tell you, LA, he sure as hell isn't doing that out of charity. For years, we have known that our political system has slowly but surely become dominated by big money and billionaires. Time after time, we have seen and experienced how our government and laws are more responsive to lobbyists than to the will of everyday people. And we also know that the agenda of dark money to keep wages low and to loot our public goods to give to the rich is deeply unpopular with people of all backgrounds, all parties, and all places. Just look at what Republicans have been quietly doing in Congress. They have been voting just this week to advance cuts on hundreds of billions of dollars from Medicaid and veterans benefits and Social Security so that they can take that money and give it to the billionaires who elected them in the form of tax cuts and sweetheart government contracts to companies like SpaceX. And you know who voted for that from California, by the way? David Valadao of California's 22nd, Young Kim of California's 40th, and Ken Calvert of California's 41st. They know that that's not what you want. They know that it is deeply unpopular. They know that it hurts you, but they are not here to serve us. They are here to serve themselves and the billionaires who have paid them, oligarchy. And they know that the only chance they have to get away with such an unpopular agenda, to get away with stealing in plain view, is to stoke deep divisions among us along lines of race, identity, and culture, to keep us fighting and distracted. This has been the big money playbook, not just now, but for decades. And that is why Donald Trump is not an aberration. He is the logical, inevitable conclusion of an American political system dominated by corporate and dark money. And if we are here to defeat him, we must defeat the system that created him. Money in politics is the hands of oligarchy, Los Angeles. And we are at a crossroads. We can either have extreme wealth inequality with the toxic division and corruption that it requires to survive, or we can have a fair economy that guarantees health care to all for working people, along with a democracy and freedoms that uphold it. Oligarchy or democracy, but we cannot have both. Los Angeles, I've made my choice. We must fight the oligarchy that has created this nightmare. And that is why I have never taken money from lobbyists or corporations, and it's why I never will. You know, when I first got to Congress, I was genuinely shocked by how this place worked. Even having run against dark money on a campaign against it in the first place, the everyday influence of corruption and dark money was astonishing, how normalized it is. In fact, Congress and members of Congress have somehow conditioned itself to actually believe that it is normal for elected representatives who swear an oath to the American people to day trade individual stocks that make millions with the sensitive information that we are entrusted with for the purpose of governing. How can anyone possibly make an objective vote on healthcare, energy, or war when their personal money is tied up in pharmaceutical, oil and gas, or defense company stocks? They can't. You can't. And we saw this play out this week with Trump's corrupt and disastrous tariff scheme. I hope that we all see now that the White House's tariff shuffle here didn't have anything to do with manufacturing like they claimed. It was about manipulating the markets. It was about hurting retirees and everyday people in the sell-off so Trump could quietly enrich his friends who he nudged to buy the dip before reversing it all in the morning. Donald Trump is a criminal. A criminal found guilty of 34 felony counts of fraud. Of course, he is lying and manipulating the stock market too. He is at his best making himself, the billionaires who back him, and the members of Congress who trade with him rich. Not you, not me, not the people. And to be clear, I don't care what party you are, Democrat or Republican. I don't care what position one holds. Members of Congress and elected officials holding and trading individual stock is wrong. It must end, and we must ban it. But I'll give you another example of how shocking and casual this all was when I was first elected. Just this year, I was named and appointed to the powerful Energy and Commerce Committee. This is one of the most powerful committees in all of Congress. And for years, lobbyists worked to keep me off this committee. It oversees 2/3 of the American economy: healthcare, energy, technology, trade. As they say in Congress, if it moves, it's energy. If it doesn't, it's commerce. And that's the jurisdiction of this committee. And an interesting thing that happened was that the day I was named to this committee, the same day, my office's phones rang off the hook and our inboxes were flooded by every corporate lobbyist under the sun. They all wanted to be my best friend. But you know what, Los Angeles? Because of your support, because of you all showing up, because I don't have to take a dime in corporate money, you allow me to say no. But not everyone is so lucky. I have seen firsthand how these groups bully and pressure members of Congress, threatening to either take money away or spend it against them if they don't do what they want. And what they want is for our lives to be as expensive as possible on the lowest possible wage. It all trickles down to how life feels for working people today.
Senator Sanders and Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez also held rallies in Anaheim and Bakersfield. You're listening to KQRU 107.9 FM in Santa Clarita. You can listen to Santa Clarita Weekly on Saturday mornings at 9 and on YouTube, Instagram, wherever you listen to podcasts. Tim, can you talk to us about local sports?
Okay, so let's talk about the Foothill League baseball and softball seasons. In baseball, on the baseball side, West Ranch and Hart are almost neck and neck for the lead in the Foothill League standings. The West Ranch baseball team lost a couple games, but still lead the Foothill League standings with a 7-1 record. West Ranch lost to Granada Hills 3-2 and La Mirada 12-4. Their next Foothill League game is against Hart. The Hart baseball team is in second place in the Foothill League with a 6-1 record. Hart beat Castaic 9-8, but lost to Ventura 5-2. In the game against Castaic, Hart scored 2 runs in the top of the 7th inning to take the lead and win the game. Castaic had an 8-2 lead after 4 innings. Hart scored 7 runs in the final 3 innings to take the lead. Okay, let's see here. Sorry about that. Gio Foster hit a solo home run, and Michael Fava was 3 for 4 with the double and drove in 4 runs for Castaic. Brady Werther was 1 for 4 with the double and drove in 2 runs, and Ryder Frist-Smith was 2 for 5 with the double, 2 RBIs, and scored 2 runs for Hart. Hart and West Ranch play next in a game that could determine the Foothill League champion. The Saugus baseball team beat Golden Valley 4-2, but lost to Santa Barbara 5-1. Saugus is in third place in the Foothill League with a 6-3 record. Saugus plays Crespi and Sierra Canyon before its next Foothill League game against Castaic. The Castaic baseball team lost to Hart 9-8, but shut out Heritage Christian 10-0. Castaic plays Canyon in their next Foothill League game. The Valencia baseball team beat Canyon twice, 11-1 in the first game and 7-4 in the second game. Valencia plays Golden Valley in their next Foothill League game. The Golden Valley baseball team lost to Saugus 4-2 and to San Fernando 8-3. The next Foothill League game for Golden Valley is against Valencia. And the Canyon baseball team lost to Foothill Tech 1-0, but beat Buckley 11-6. Canyon plays Castaic in their next Foothill League game. On the softball side, the Saugus softball team is still undefeated in the Foothill League. Saugus softball team won its 10th game in a row and is undefeated at 9-0 in the Foothill League standings, and first place in the Foothill League standings. Saugus beat West Ranch 6-1 to win its 10th game in a row. Saugus also beat Valencia 5-4. In the game against West Ranch, Gordon Shepard hit a solo home run and scored 2 runs for Saugus. Savannah Smith was 3 for 3 and scored 3 runs. Saugus plays Hart in their next Foothill League game. The Valencia softball team is in second place in the Foothill League with a 6-3 record. Valencia lost to Saugus but shut out Castaic 8-0. Carly Kearns tossed a 5-hit shutout against Castaic and struck out 13. Sydney Boulder went 3 for 5 with a double and a triple, drove in 2 runs and scored 3. Valencia plays Castaic again in their next Foothill League game. The West Ranch softball team beat Castaic 8-3, but lost to Saugus 6-1. West Ranch is in third place in the Foothill League with a 5-4 record. West Ranch plays Chavez before its next Foothill League game against Hart. The Hart softball team beat Canyon 6-2 and Golden Valley 8-4. Hart's next Foothill League game is against Saugus. The Canyon softball team beat West Ranch 6-2, but lost to Hart 6-2. Canyon's next Foothill League game is against Golden Valley. The Castaic softball team lost to West Ranch 8-3 and to Valencia 8-0. Castaic's next Foothill League game is against Hart, and the Golden Valley softball team lost to Sierra Canyon 26-0 and to Hart 8-4. Golden Valley plays Canyon in their next Foothill League game. Let's move on to Major League Baseball, and we'll let Sage talk about the Dodgers.
All right, so let's talk about the Dodgers. So the Dodgers swept the Rockies at Dodger Stadium and put together a 4-game winning streak before losing to the Texas Rangers on a walk-off 2-run home run. In the third game against the Rockies, the Dodgers scored 7 runs in the first inning, highlighted by a monster 448-foot home run by Shohei Ohtani, and held on to win 8-7. Yoshinobu Yamamoto followed with 7 shutout innings against the Rangers in Texas, a game the Dodgers won 3-0. It was the first of 3 tight and intense games against the Rangers. The Dodgers lost the second game 4-3 and a walk-off 2-run home run by Adolis Garcia. It ended the Dodgers' 4-game winning streak. But the Dodgers bounced back the next day, sort of. The winning 1-0, Freddie Freeman drove in the only run of the game on a sacrifice fly in the 8th inning. Tyler Glasnow started for the Dodgers, but left in the 5th inning with cramps in his legs, and it doesn't look like an injury that will keep him out of rotation for very long, but it does add to his injury history. Before leaving the game, Glasnow pitched 4 scoreless innings and struck out 6. The Dodgers went from Texas to Chicago for a short 2-game series against the Cubs before heading back home for a weekend series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. So, Tim, where does Ohtani rank in the National League for home runs?
Yeah, so Ohtani's having a decent a power hitting season, just like he did last year. He has 6 home runs so far this year. He's 3rd in the National League in home runs. The real surprise on the Dodgers this year is Tommy Edman. Tommy Edman has hit 8 home runs, and he's tied for the National League lead in home runs. And they really wouldn't have expected that with all the star power on this team with Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and Teoscar Hernandez. I don't think anybody would have thought that Tommy Edman would be not only leading the team in home runs, but leading the National League in home runs. So he's kind of been the surprise. But Ohtani's power numbers are fine. They're up where they should be. And, I don't think he will stay 3rd in the league in home runs for very long. He just needs a good weekend, a good series to jump over a couple players and move into that top spot in the National League in home runs.
All right, so the Dodgers, the Rockies are not a great team, but how did the Dodgers' offensive performance against the Rockies contrast with their recent form?
Yeah, I think the Rockies were just what the doctor ordered for the Dodgers during this time. I mean, they struggled against the Cubs. They had a big blowout loss to the Cubs, 16-0, before the Rockies came into town and came in for a little 3-game series. So yeah, the Dodgers were struggling offensively. They got shut out once. They got blown out once, and they needed to play a team where they could find their strokes again. They could get some hits. And let's say there were easy games against the Rockies, because there's never easy games in the major leagues, but the Rockies aren't one of the better teams in the league, and the Dodgers were able to put up put together some hits, hit some home runs, and put together some offensive numbers that are more indicative of what this team can do on a regular basis. So the Dodgers needed a series against the Rockies to kind of get their confidence back, get some runs on the board, and show the league that they are still a a dangerous hitting team. So I don't know if it was so much that the Dodgers turned their offense around. It was more about playing a team like the Rockies to give them a little bit of confidence.
All right, so let's switch sports and let's talk about hockey. The Los Angeles Kings. So the Kings took a 4-0 lead in Game 1 of the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs against the Oilers, but needed a last-minute goal in the third period to win the game. The Kings scored 2 goals in the first period and added 2 more in the second period before the Oilers finally scored their first goal with 6 seconds left in the second period. The Oilers scored 4 more goals in the third period and tied the score 5-5 with less than a minute to play. The Oilers were down 5-3 and pulled the goalie just over 2 minutes to play. They scored twice to tie the score, and the Kings blew their 4-0 lead. But Philip Deneau scored his second goal of the game with 42 seconds left in the game to give the Kings an exciting 6-5 win. The Kings and Oilers have met in the playoffs 4 years in a row now. The Oilers have won the first 3 series, but Game 2 was at the Crypto.com Arena before heading to Edmonton for Games 3 and 4. So, Tim, despite the eventual win, how concerning was it to see the Kings squander a 4-goal lead, especially in a playoff game? And what does that say about their resilience or potential weaknesses?
Okay, so this game, the first game of this series, went through a whole gamut of emotions for Kings fans, and I'm sure the players too. The first 2 periods of this game, the Kings looked dominant. The Kings looked like they were not going to give the Oilers much of a chance to get their offense going, and it turned into a physical and an aggressive game from both sides. The Oilers were actually the ones trying to agitate the Kings more than the Kings the other way around. There's a lot of shoving, a lot of penalties, there was a lot of short tempers on the Oilers side too. They were trying to pick fights. They were taking a lot of bad penalties too. And at one point during the third period, the Kings had a 5-on-3 power play, and they couldn't score. And that was kind of the story of this game, was that the Kings had their chances. The Kings had plenty of opportunities to put the Oilers away, and instead the Oilers found openings, and when they found an opening, they broke the door open wide. They scored goals in bunches in the third period. And I said they went from being down 4-0 to tying the score 5-5. And then when the Oilers finally did pull the goalie and tried to tie the game up, the Kings had 2 shots at an empty net and missed. So they bury one of those goals in an empty net, and the game's over. They're not going to come back in the last 2 minutes of a game and score 2 goals. But yeah, this was the story of the game. Like the first 2 periods, the Kings were not giving the Oilers any chances to score, and in the last period, the Kings couldn't stop the Oilers from scoring. It's the other way around. So it was just really a tale of 2 games in the first game of this series, and the Kings were lucky. The Kings were lucky to get out of this Game 1 with the lead in the series. So we'll see how it goes from here. But yeah, there's a lot to be concerned about, and I don't know which Kings team is going to show up for Game 2. Is it the one that played lockdown hockey for the first 2 periods, or is it going to be the team that couldn't take advantage of their opportunities in the third period? I don't know what's going to happen in Game 2.
So Philip Deneau had a huge game with 2 goals, including the game winner. But what does his performance say about his importance to the Kings, especially in crucial playoff moments?
Yeah, this line with Philip Deneau has been surprising. It's not supposed to be a high goal scoring line. This is supposed to be the checking line. This is supposed to be the defensive line. This is supposed to be the line that goes on the ice when the other team's best line is on the ice. So they're not there to score goals. They're there to prevent the other team from taking advantage and scoring goals. But Deneau and this line have come up with big goals all season long. This is nothing new. This is something that they have done on a regular basis. And even though they're supposed to be the tough line, they're supposed to be the enforcer line, they've been scoring. They're an offensive line. They know how to get the puck in the goal, and And Deneau, I'm not surprised to see Deneau come up with 2 big goals in this game. But I am surprised that the other lines that are supposed to be the goal producers didn't come up with the big goals in this game. But it's nice to see. It's nice to see that this line is still producing and it's still scoring goals. And if this line can score goals, the Kings will beat the Oilers in this series. If this line is scoring, the Kings are a much better team.
All right. Thank you, Tim. So we'll be keeping a close eye on the Kings as the series progresses. But for now, it's time to wrap things up. That's our show. Tune in next week for more discussions about the news from Santa Clarita. You can listen to us on the radio at KQRU 107.9 FM at 9 on Saturday mornings. You can also watch us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, and listen to us on SantaClaritaStar.com, wherever you listen to podcasts. So leave us a comment and be sure to subscribe to Santa Clarita Weekly Online. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Santa Clarita Weekly. You can watch the show on Santa Clarita Star's YouTube channel and Facebook page, as well as listen in on the radio at KQRU 107.9. Visit SantaClaritaStar.com for more content and tune in right here to KQRU 107.9. A new voice for Santa Clarita.